Roneil finished his degree in economics in 2012 and went on to do his diploma in accounting at UBC. So he did the DAP program. And from there, he went on to work for PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, then MNP. And now is a current associate with Capital West Partners. This is a field that many of our students inquire about, and he will be speaking to it. It's investment banking, and I'll leave it to you, Roneil. Just a quick note, we have a smaller group, so I'm really going to encourage everyone to get involved in discussion here, because we can ask some specific questions. I've got tons of them, and I'm sure you do too. So I'll leave it to Roneil. Go for it.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Azam, for the introduction. As Azam was saying, I graduated from economics at SFU in 2012, and wasn't quite sure what I was going to do when I started university, but had a feeling I wanted to work in finance, and investment banking sounded pretty cool. Wasn't sure how I was going to get there, but got there somehow. So it takes a village. I can tell you that much. But yeah, and I worked at PwC in their audit group before working at MNP Corporate Finance, and then my current role at Capital West Partners. We're a mid-market investment bank based in Vancouver, and we've been around for I think about 30 years now, and there's 6 partners, and I'm one of them. And we mainly advise companies on M&A transactions. So if they want to sell their business, or they want to go buy a business, or merge with another company, or do some other strategic transaction, we get engaged and we work with them on those deals. So yeah, I mean, that's I've been there for 2 years, just over 2 years now. I really like it. I'm sure you guys are aware of investment banking, and have heard some stories, and they're probably all true. But you know, it is a challenging work environment. No day is the same, but I think that's my favorite part. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I think this next slide is what I would have done differently. So I think that's back in maybe when I was at Simon Fraser. I guess just to give a bit of background, when I was an SFU Economics student, I wasn't really that involved in the university community. I wasn't a part of any clubs. I had a lot of friends that were in business, and they were very active in building their networks, which was very helpful for them down the road. So I think the first point, and somebody told me this when I was in university, but I just didn't care. But now I understand why it's so important, is I certainly would have made a greater effort to network, not only, you know, within the university circles, but if I was interested in a certain job or a field, and I didn't really know too much about it, I mean, I certainly would have gone, if I could go back, I would be much more aggressive and active, and you know, taking people out for coffees, or giving them a call and just learning a little bit more about what they do. And just the more contacts you have with people and the more consistent you're doing it, I mean, you would be absolutely shocked by the end of it how big your network is. And it's really not, I mean, it is important what you know, but it is so much more important about who you do know. So yeah, I think that's like the number one thing. I cannot stress that enough. Yeah, I probably would have started my CFA when I was in university. I got pretty busy after graduating, doing my CPA, and started working. So don't have as much bandwidth as I did when I was in university. And yeah, I think the third point here, again, if there's a field that you're interested in, well, and you know you want to end up there, is, you know, do everything you can to just be as close to it as possible. And again, that's just networking with industry contacts, or talking to, your peer groups, or there's just tons and tons of information online now that wasn't as prevalent when I was in university. So the internet is a great resource. And I think the last one, it's a bit more specific, but just taking financial modeling courses. Like I think, I'm not sure what it's like now, but I know in university, not sure if there were courses for this specifically, but day one when you start working investment banking, you're pretty deep into Excel and spreadsheets and doing a bunch of modeling work. So it'd be very, very helpful if you already took some courses online. I mean, there's lots and lots of courses online. But I think the important thing is you actually kind of understand how things work. You're not just like punching numbers in. You actually can follow things through and understand why you're doing them. And I think thirdly, just you can speak the language. When you're talking to people. I have students call me, once every 2 weeks, and a lot of them are from the US, and they're very well prepared, and they've all taken external courses, have done tons of networking, and it's very obvious when they're speaking to me that they can speak the language. And I would say that, if you're going for the same jobs as these people, then you are certain, I'll be very blunt, you're definitely at a disadvantage if you're not really at the same level. I mean, as you guys know, it's becoming ever so competitive year over year as everyone just gets smarter, and the resumes are just even better than the cohort before. So yeah, I think just kind of being just immersed in that environment as much as possible. I think, that would have been something that certainly would have, helped me even more. So, yeah.
Roneil, can I ask you a question, if you don't mind? Right here.
For sure.
So a couple of questions. One is, why investment banking, and what did you know about investment banking when you were an undergrad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good question, Azam. So I think I'll start with your second question there. So I didn't know a ton, to be honest. I knew that from any TV show or movie, it was quite, romanticized. These guys make lots of money, and they close big deals, and they fly in big planes, and they work a lot. So that's really kind of all I knew. But the more and more I learned about it, what was kind of exciting to me was being an advisor, and helping people, and working on these large corporate transactions. And a big part of our job is strategic thinking. We help either pitch a company on why they should go and buy someone, and then, or if we're selling a company, I mean, we're kind of strategizing the whole deal and putting the whole thing together. So it is quite interesting work. And of course, down the road, you can be certainly well compensated for it, which is a bonus. But I think it's a combination of working. It's very rare if you were to step into an investment bank, the partners and the senior directors they work just as hard as the associates. I think that's the case at every investment bank. They're very driven, ambitious people. Just because you've worked for 15, 20 years does not mean you're gonna work 9 to 5. They're as hungry now as they were when they started. And that's great for young guys like me that, you're sitting beside guys that this is all they think about. And they continue to learn and develop. So from a continued learning perspective, this job is really endless. So that's what I really like about it. And what I knew kind of when I was applying, that's kind of what it would have been like. So I would say that got me really excited, was sort of this kind of evolving and increasing level of continued learning and just kind of strategic thinking.
Thanks, Roneil. Just a quick follow-up question. You say that students from the US call you and they're well prepared. Tell me what questions they're asking and what do you mean by well prepared? What's their profile look like?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think well prepared in the sense that they understand the M&A markets and it's not just, you know, hey, I'm interested in working here. I love an internship. It's, you know, I've been following the markets, you know, they might even talk about a few big deals that happen and kind of get my perspective on that. And, you know, if that's something that we would be involved in. So it's just kind of, generally speaking, like it's ideally you always want to be someone's peer when you're trying to, I guess, how should I put this? Like if I'm talking to my partner at work and I'm trying to gain their respect, ideally he sees me as an equal, but the best way to achieve that is to be knowledgeable and prepared. So when I have US college students calling me, they're relatively informed of any, you know, big deals that happen, talk a little bit about their, you know, experience, any internships, and also I would say that I always ask, well, why do you want to do this? It's like kind of the first question I always ask, and the answer is usually pretty good and, you know, pretty thought out, and that's not always the case. Yeah, did that answer the question?
Yeah, it did answer my question. But was there any specifics that they had maybe built in, i.e. they you know, they knew how to read financial statements, they understood you know, I don't know, derivatives. I mean, is there anything specific that we should have our students understand or they should be equipped with before they approach someone like you?
I think it's just like, you know, like if I were to call someone like, and someone, you know, asks very obvious questions of like, why do you want to do this? Like, why do you think you could be good at this? You know, what experience do you have? Those are just kind of pretty basic things people should have down pat. But that takes lots of self-reflection time to polish out. So there's no such thing as being too prepared. I guess is my point. When I was doing my interviews for the accounting firms, I probably didn't sleep for 2 weeks just preparing for my interviews and doing mock interviews just over and over and over again until I could just do it in my sleep. So it is really taking a very relentless approach. I think somebody once told me, you know, if you want something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done, and that's always stuck with me. It's like you really need to like break out of your comfort zone and like prepare like you've never prepared for before. And that's not just specific to what I'm saying in this industry. That's just general advice I would give you guys is I've seen people succeed in my peer group, and those people prepare very well and they work really, really hard, and it pays dividends.
Thank you. Thanks, Roneil.
Yeah, no problem.
If anyone has any other questions, please, I mean, jump in and or put your question in the chat, please.
Is there a chat? I don't know if I see this chat, but all good. Yeah, feel free to just start ask a question. My average day, yeah. So you know, again, like we are advisors to companies doing M&A transactions. So it depends if we're advising a company that wants to sell or buy. I mean, it's two different things. So I just sum it up to say very unpredictable, but to give you sort of an example, if we had been hired to sell a company, my day to day, I mean, you know, we would put together basically an offering memorandum, which is a marketing document. So we would try to summarize a little bit about the company, some investment highlights, and just make this company sound as amazing as possible. So it's like creative writing, it's marketing, it's strategic thinking. There's some graphic design in there. So that's just literally every kind of skill. Sometimes I'm doing these and I'm forgetting I work in a finance job when we're putting these presentations together. And then, the next hour I could be modeling out their forecast for the next 5 years. That's a very technical process. Working with the client, this is a very client-facing job. So there really is a wide range of skills that are used all day long. From, I could just be not talking to anybody for 4 hours, and then I'm on a call with the client for the next 4 hours, trying to figure out how to forecast their expenses or revenue. So yeah, it honestly is a bit all over the place. Yeah, reviewing legal agreements, presentations. I think that's another thing why I really like this job. I'm someone that gets kind of not bored, but I like to be engaged and do different things. And this job there's legal in there, there's marketing, there's finance, there's tons and tons of client facing interactions. So it really does involve kind of everything I've ever learned into one job. So yeah, and my average day is we do work a lot. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, the average days are. Oh, we got a question here. Christopher, hi Christopher. Can you talk about investment banking in Vancouver? For example, do middle markets and boutique firms take any preference on intake from local students? Yeah, that's a good question, Christopher. Yeah, I mean, I can certainly speak for ourselves. I mean, we like people from Vancouver, but at the end of the day, and maybe this is a bit of a vague answer, but we want to hire the right person. So if that person's coming from Calgary or Toronto, it generally doesn't matter, as long as it's the right fit. Let's see, versus chips. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but there's the preference. Ideally, yeah, it is. For us, it is local, but at the end of the day, we want to hire the right candidate. So, yeah.
So I think Christopher's trying to ask, what is that right person? What does that right person possess for you guys?
Yeah,
that's what I would be asking Christopher. Sorry for talking for you.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think again, it really does come back to, I mean, I can speak to when I was doing my interview at Cap West. I think the one thing that really got them excited was I was able to communicate that I was the right fit, and that I would be willing to work, like really, really hard. It's a bit of a softer approach to interviewing, but I always find it's great to have all the boxes checked, but really what separates people in an interview is, can you emotionally connect with the person that you're talking to? And a lot of that is, kind of is talking about your own core values and what the company's core values are and how that all aligns. For them, for us, I mean, we're an independent investment bank. It is a true partnership, and it is kind of eat what you kill, and you're only as good as your last deal. So I'm the type of person that has a very similar mindset. Once we do something good, we want to do an even better job on the next one. So yeah, I think it is communicating that you truly actually do want to do this, and you are interested, and kind of giving some thought around like what's the best way to kind of communicate that. So Yeah.
So you didn't finish your thought, Roneil, on your average day. You were going to tell us the hours, but you just didn't finish that. What is that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as I'm sorry. I'd say it depends. I mean, on average, you could be kind of get in the office around, I like to get in earlier around 7:30, and on average probably leave around 8 or 9. But I would say there's been months where, you know, we're probably looking at sort of 80 hours a week realistically. And I think that is somewhat standard across the industry. And the reason for that, if you guys are wondering why the hours are so long, is that things take a long time to do. And because the job is client facing, everything that any deliverable that goes to the client has to be perfect. There can't be any errors. I can't even explain to you how much I've agonized over very minor formatting errors that 3 years ago I wouldn't care about, but now it's just, if a blue is shaded too light, it's you know, someone will notice it. But because it's a client-facing job and things need to be right, there is just hours and hours spent reviewing things and making sure everything makes sense. There's no errors. Even drafting an email to a client, you know, that could take 30 minutes. Getting the message right, being concise. So everything takes a long time. And the moment we've been engaged by a client to either sell their company or buy a company, we're on the clock. And for us, we want to do as many deals as possible in the shortest amount of time frame. And there's constant deadlines, constant client deadlines. So the only way to meet those deadlines is, you know, you just end up working a lot. And that's just kind of how it is. And I suspect it'll always be that way.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, so this is what I love, and the challenges. Yeah, I think I kind of spoke about this. Like, I really like the fact that, you know, my job is, again, I could be doing marketing one day. I'm literally on the phones calling potential buyers and selling the company on the phone. You know, I could literally spend 3 days doing that. And I could spend the next 3 days, you know, on Excel building out forecasts, or help review, you know, the legal agreements for the purchase agreements. So it's just a really interesting mix of things that you're doing, sort of month over month. And it kind of usually happen in phases, if you're on one deal. So I've learned that's why I really like this job. And I think what I also love is working with super ambitious people, because it makes you level up. And I'm sure you guys have heard the saying, you know, you end up being, you're sort of a mixture of the 5 people closest to you, or the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I mean, I certainly have changed a lot in the last 2 years working here, working with really, really smart guys, really, really hardworking, ambitious people. So yeah, it just kind of makes you want it that much more, and get that much more excited to come to work. So those are probably the big reasons why I love my job. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. And then the challenges. Yeah. I mean, obviously, with the time that you're at work, I mean, yes, the biggest challenge is, you know, you're going to sacrifice a lot of time missing, you know, family events and spending times with friends. So, I mean, that's just the reality of it. Some people are more understanding than others, but that is something that is an issue for many people to get in this field. So that's probably the biggest one. Yes. Useful skills. So yeah, again, active listening. So whether that's the client or your partner or whoever, is just really paying attention when you're listening to someone and actually being a part of the conversation. I think this is something I learned. I wasn't always a very good public speaker when I was in university. I mean, I'd probably be characterized as a bit of an extrovert, but what I noticed in the last couple of years is if I was in a board meeting or we were doing some sort of presentation and I was just told the day before that I was going to speak, I'm sure, I would be like, oh God, couldn't have given me a couple more weeks to prepare. But I think the important thing is you kind of psych yourself out a lot, that you might stumble on your words or you're not sure what you're saying, or people are judging you when they're really not, is really when you're being a part of a conversation. So actually being a part of the discussion and actively listening, and it makes speaking a lot easier, and people notice that. So yeah, that's one. I think being proactive, can't stress this enough. I mean, this is important in most jobs, obviously not just mine, but yeah, I mean, this kind of just, again, comes down to, how interested you are and how bad do you even want what you're doing. But certainly the people I've noticed that have really excelled, always go over and above. They're trying their best to think ahead. And I'll tell you, even if you don't know the answer, I always appreciate someone that tried, because that's telling me that they want to learn. And that's really important, whether it's on even an email, get somebody to draft an email for you, or take a first crack at a financial model. I think that's like really, really important. And again, something that I always see separates many people. And that's kind of intertwined with the next thing here, thinking ahead. This next one here, putting yourself in others' shoes. So this is something I've noticed many people have a hard time doing. And it is kind of tied with empathy, but it is kind of, for us, especially when we're delivering news to people and having meetings, it's okay, well, here's kind of how we're thinking. Put yourself in a potential buyer or seller's shoes. Like, how would they react to this news? So, and then that allows you to strategically kind of tweak what your message is, which is very helpful. I mean, that's a professional kind of setting example, but I think on a personal level, I think just when you're speaking to people, I always find it really important, if I'm gonna even talking to a friend or a family member, is before I say something, I always put myself in their shoes and say, well, how would I feel if I was just told this? I think emotional intelligence is something that is like really, really, really important. And I think it can be taught. It just takes practice. But it can really separate people. And yeah, and the next two, I mean, these are just kind of specific to the job, but financial modeling and being able to build out presentations on PowerPoint and stuff. So yeah.
Again, if you have questions, please ask in the chat, or we can unmute you as well. Roneil, can I just ask you another quick question? It's a foundational question more than anything. If you were to define investment banking, how would you do that? I mean, just in an overall sense, what is investment banking? I get a lot of students asking me this question because they don't know, and so they take guesses. It's finance, it's buying and selling companies, it's managing clients, it's managing portfolios. I know it's a bit of all of that, but is there a more succinct sort of definition of what investment banking would be?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a few things for sure. Generally, you're a bit of an advisor. I would say that's at the core of it, right? Anyone that's an investment banker is usually advising a client. I would say mergers and acquisitions is certainly probably the biggest part of investment banking, and there's also, you know, sales and trading. But I would say generally especially here in Canada, investment banking is advising companies on, you know, if they want to go raise equity, if they want to go public, if they want to raise debt, if they want to sell, if they want to go buy a company, they hire an investment banker to help them in that whole process. And these processes could take anywhere from 6 months to a year. I would say that's kind of what it would be. Okay, I got a question here from Christopher. Can you talk about the level of fluency in financial modeling is a good standard? So building DCF from scratch comps. Can you talk about the level? Oh, what's a good standard? Yeah, I mean, again, Chris, I think that's probably a good starting point. You're not going to be expected to build out anything complex, but you're just wanting to make sure people understand the basic kind of valuation metrics and models, and that they understand conceptually how an LBO works, how a three-statement model works, and how they can build a DCF from scratch, even if it's just a very simple one. So I would say what you have there is probably a good starting point. Yeah. Yeah. If there's another question.
I have, sorry, if you don't mind. What's more difficult, would you say? Is it buying or selling? Is it merger? Is it acquisition? Where's the complexity? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure selling companies is one thing, but I would imagine buying companies takes a lot of time.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I mean, obviously two very different processes. I mean, we've been hired by a company in Mexico, actually, as of earlier this month, because they have a North American growth strategy, and they want to start with Canada. And so they basically have kind of engaged us to help them not only identify the target, but help them. Basically, when you're helping people buy a company, you're almost sort of a part of their team. So you're almost a part of you kind of get plugged into their kind of senior leadership team, and you're almost, you know, working with the company on this very, very closely. So that's always kind of fun, because you actually understand how people are thinking about, okay, we want to kind of go and grow our business, and generally a really good way to do that is to. Sorry, I think there's a question. Just figuring this out here. Did you use any products for interview prep like Wall Street Oasis? I did not. I got a little lucky, but I know that those are both pretty good. So yeah, I mean, I've never used them, but I know my friends have used Wall Street Oasis. Again, and I think this is kind of going back to what I was saying, like education is really important. And so, you know, when I'm thinking about spending money on things, I like to invest in myself as much as humanly possible. So if there is a program out there for $400 or $500 or $600, assuming that, you know, you can stomach the cost, I would always say yes and do them, because you're going to learn something regardless. And even if it doesn't work out, I mean, that's okay. You're going to end up leveraging that at some point or another anyways. Yeah, so sorry, to answer your question, Azim, I don't know what's harder. I've had sell side mandates that have been incredibly difficult and fallen apart, either due to the client's value expectations or you know, there's nothing worse than working on a deal for 8 months and the deal falls apart at the 11th hour. So that's happened to me twice. It's not fun, but that's the reality of the industry. So, yeah, so they're both present their own challenges. I can say that much.
Roneil, I have a question for you. So do you have any resources or books or recommendations for people to, you know, learn, expand their knowledge about the industry, or to like keep up to date about what's going on in the industry right now?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, there's lots of news outlets like BNN and Bloomberg. Sorry, they're the same, BNN and Bloomberg here in Canada and CNBC in the States. So it's always good to just stay abreast of what's happening, especially with like large companies. In terms of books, there's plenty of investment banking books. I think there's one that's literally called Investment Banking, and it's sort of the Bible in the industry, and it kind of walks you through, you know, how to value a company and what investment bankers do. So I would recommend that one. That one's pretty good if anyone's actually interested in it. Yeah.
So do you follow a routine in the morning in terms of, you know, you open up your website, you know, you go to Bloomberg or you go to CNBC to get an idea? And to follow up with another question, do you, with your company right now, are you doing business mostly with companies in Vancouver, or are you just based in Vancouver doing business all over the country or US and States?
Yeah. I mean, we're a Vancouver office. I would say the majority of our clients are BC based. In the last 2 years, we have had 3 clients outside of BC. One was based out in New York, which was a large furniture manufacturer, actually. That used to be public, but it was owned by a private equity firm, and they engaged us to sell. So I'd say for us, generally, like we're kind of doing most deals for BC clients. So yeah, there's a question here from Christopher. It says, do you have any niche advice for us local students? I know the competition from target schools like Sauder, Ivy, and Robin is high. How can SFU students set ourselves apart? Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Christopher. I would be asking the same thing. Again, you know, if I was looking at 2 resumes, one was at UBC and one was at SFU, and they were virtually identical, but the only difference was, you know, one was SFU student, the other one was Sauder. I would say the most important thing is, again, is your fit in the firm and the relationship that you've built with the people at the firm. Generally, people like to hire people that they really like, and they think that would be a strong fit. So that's kind of my advice there, is just, it's really not that good advice, but it's you want to build really strong relationships with the people that you're interviewing with. You want to get them to see you in a light that you can communicate that I can really thrive here and I can be a good fit and I can be a big contributor for you guys. Because otherwise, yeah, it's, you know, we you know, just to give you some insight, Christopher, we were going through a hiring process last year, and I think we probably got 1,000 applications. And many people just kind of pop their application in through LinkedIn. And that's probably why the number was so high, but it's really easy if someone has a Sauder, Ivy, or Rotman to at least flag that, because, you know, obviously they're reputable business schools. But I think what students that are sort of at a perceived disadvantage, what would be helpful is if you kind of cold call, and maybe people don't pick up, but it's actually just finding ways to kind of, again, build a relationship with the people that you're trying to work for and separate yourself that way, because it always comes down to relationships, like every single time.
And could I just elaborate on that, if you don't mind, Christopher and Roneil? You know, having recognized or recognized schools, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's out there. But if you have alumni that are hiring alumni, the only reason they're hiring alumni is because they've been through the same experience that these other students have. So there's a recognition there, there's a familiarity there. So I would recommend, Christopher, as Roneil said, build relationships, because that's what people really want. 1,000 applications, either at SFU as well. We have many applications, but usually we go by who may know someone or may be familiar with someone. So building that relationship, I think, is actually fundamental, especially when you're getting into an industry like Roneil's, because at the end of the day, it's a huge industry, but it's a small group of people, I think, that are actually in that field and likely know each other or have heard of each other. Would that be correct, Roneil?
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty good relationship with someone at the firm, and I mean, to be honest, my resume was probably not as strong as some people coming out of finance or had other banking experience in Toronto. But what I did have was a good relationship with a couple people there. And I just got along with them, you know, and I was kind of myself. And I think that worked out really well for me. And it didn't really have anything to do with my resume, to be honest, but it was more of a relationship component there.
Roneil, I'm going to be very sort of conscious of time here. I mean, it's flying by.
Sure.
So we have about 15 minutes left, but I did need to do one thing. One is to sort of summarize what you would say for an undergrad. So for an undergrad who hasn't had a finance background, you had mentioned that you would probably have done your CFA level 1 at least, just to get familiar with vernacular and industry terms, so you're prepared for interviews. That was one thing you had mentioned. Would that be correct?
Yep.
And the other thing you'd mentioned was, again, the whole networking part, just attending things like this, attending whatever workshops or events, coffee chats you can, because especially in your industry, connections are everything, and it's a huge advantage.
Yeah. As I'm sorry to cut you off, I just so one other example of why it's so important. Like when I was in your guys' shoes in economics, I decided I wanted to do my CA, but I was in economics and I wasn't even in business, and so I had no idea how I was going to get from point A to point B. And then every summer there's a CA recruiting it's very regimented, very organized, that really I think only business students go to or have access to. But I somehow managed to get into some of these events. But again, what I will say is I wasn't even in business, and I was able to go to these networking events and just kind of just be a person, right? Like just be someone that somebody actually wants to hang out with and spend 14 hours a day with. Like that's, I've spent 3 years at PwC, and all those 3 years I was on the recruiting team. And I can tell you right now, the most important thing is people want to hire people that they can actually be friends with. I mean, obviously, you know, you got to have the grades and the work ethic, and all that is assumed, but you know, ideally you want to hire all your friends, right? So it's that's kind of the lens that I kind of was able to advance through all the interviews and actually land an internship at PwC. Again, my resume was nowhere near any business student. I was in no clubs. I had barely taken an accounting class and probably beat out 700-800 students for those jobs. But because I was able to effectively build good relationships with all the firms, so I can't stress how important that is.
I think we have a question here from Christopher.
Oh, yep. There's. Can you talk us through career progression and any non-traditional paths you've seen? What paths do you think? Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, I would say mine is probably very non-traditional. I started. It's a bit different here in US. It's pretty standard process. You kind of go and do a degree and get right into an analyst role at a bank. But non-traditional wise, I did my CA and then kind of got into it a little bit later, or a little bit older than most students from business. In terms of positions and internships, do you think it will be best to break into the buy side? It's definitely tricky for the buy side. I've really only known people that have done banking for at least 2-3 years before they get into the buy side. I don't really know anyone that has just kind of jumped into it. But again, it's a lot of it is networking. The buy side scene here in Vancouver is really, really small. There's only a handful of private equity shops, and they all run very, very lean. And I think most of the associates or analysts have started their careers working at investment bank first and then switching over. So not sure if that is very helpful, but that's at least kind of what I've seen.
So in your opinion, Roneil, what's a good entry point right after grad? I mean, you're not going to go directly into investment banking and into IB. I mean, that's not going to happen. What would be the first? What's a good first step for someone who doesn't have much experience? Banking.
Yeah, I think I
on the personal side, commercial side. What do you think?
Oh, just generally banking. Yeah, I mean, I think. The commercial banking team, that could be something to kind of at least, I know a couple people that worked on the commercial banking team and then after a couple of years switched to investment banking. So that is a bit of a non-traditional path. So other people will do their CA and then I have a couple friends that did that. We went to school together, did our CA, and one of them works at RBC and I work at a mid-market. So yeah, and that actually was a pretty good route because we were both able to work at very, very big accounting firms, and we had a really great time for 3 years there and built massive networks in the city. And then we still ended up getting a really exciting job at the end, and we're able to do something a little bit different before, at least. So, but yeah, I think advice-wise to get into banking, yeah, it's certainly very tricky to get in right out of university unless you're probably in a finance program. Vancouver, they don't really hire that many students annually. But yeah, I mean, you can commercial banking for sure is something. And again, it is really just having visibility and talking to people like constantly and being annoying is totally fine because that just means you want it. So.
I'm going to sneak in some more questions. I'm so sorry. CPA versus CFA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's so much versus, but if you could do both, that's great. the CFA is certainly very specific to finance. The CPA is something that if you were to get, I mean, chances are you'll probably always be in demand and always have a job. I can pretty much guarantee you that. So ideally, yeah, just get both of them, I guess. But yeah, I don't know if it's so much one or the other.
Right.
But they're both really good, and in finance, for sure, CFA is. I don't have it. I honestly don't really have too much time to study, which is probably why I should have done it a little bit earlier. But that's certainly something that lots of people are interested in.
Should graduates who want to get into IB stay in Vancouver? This is a tough question, or move to Toronto or Calgary?
Yeah,
where are the best chances?
The best chances are probably, well, it's tricky because you kind of want to play to your strengths, right? I mean, in Toronto, they have a bunch of schools there that they generally hire from. So I think it's really, really tough to go from Vancouver to Toronto unless you know someone. And I'm just being very blunt and honest here, but you know, Ivy and Rotman have very strong programs, so it's a bit challenging. That being said, there is certainly more jobs there than here. So if I were to really want to pursue finance, then I probably, if I was in university, I probably would have just moved to Toronto, to be honest. And I probably would have just gotten some job in the meantime while allowing myself, again, to build my network and just meet people and kind of go about it in a different way, right? You're kind of at a bit of a disadvantage. So you need to figure out a way to turn your disadvantage into an advantage. So yeah, that would be my thought there. Although that you know that you got to really ask yourself, how bad do you want it? I mean, worst case, you go to Toronto and have a great time and meet a bunch of people, so it's probably not so bad.
So Roneil, maybe the final question before, I know Christopher has. Oh, okay. We'll take Christopher's question. It's a good one. Can you speak on recruitment process for M&M and boutique firms? What does your internship application pool look like? Is it regimented and similar to BB's recruitment processes? That's a good question.
Yeah, ours is not as, it's a bit more off cycle. I mean, theirs is a little bit more of a standard process. Generally people leave after they get their bonuses, so that's kind of when they're hiring. But I would say our recruitment process, yeah, like even for middle markets, like it's always good to just have the people at the firms, you know, kind of know who you are, right? I mean, things just kind of happen, and it's always good to be top of mind. I'm not sure if we have had an intern for the last few years, although I would love one. That'd be very helpful. But yeah, I think recruitment process for us, you know, we'll kind of throw out a posting and there'll be, you know, 4 or 5 interviews and some case studies. And it honestly could be at any point in the year. It's not at, you know, December or January. It could be at any time. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
So I've got a final question here for you, Roneil. Sure. What about your career progression? Where to next? And is there going to be a couple of things? One is there going to be a move? Is there going to be a stay in Vancouver to a bigger firm, smaller firm, your own firm? And is there going to be any graduate work or any other schooling that you're going to be engaged in?
I'll probably do my CBV, which is a Chartered Business Valuation certificate. I'll probably do that. I don't think I'm gonna leave Vancouver now. I'm in a pretty good situation, and I like where I am right now. Although we're always changing as people every year, but for now I'm not going anywhere. And career progression wise, I would love to be partner here in sometime in the future, and we'll continue gunning for that on a day-to-day. So that's kind of my plan.
And what does industry outlook look like for investment banking for IB in terms of growth, in terms of employment? We didn't speak of COVID and the pandemic, but I understand that you guys have actually been thriving, and as many other financial institutions have. But do we see a slowdown? Are we waiting for CERB to die down, or is there going to be a freeze?
Yeah.
Where are we at?
No, I think it's going to be a really good year. There was a record amount of debt and equity financing sort of in the back half of 2020. Market conditions were really good. These private equity firms have just an insane amount of money that they need to start deploying. And they were somewhat active in 2020, but hit pause, and they are a very big buyer for lots of businesses. And I think they've sort of addressed COVID, and they're ready to start buying businesses. So I think it's going to be a really, really busy year, not just for us, but for everyone in the industry.
And are those practices going to be rescue packages, or are they going to be just all out buying, or
I think I would expect sort of as we get to Q3 this year, we're going to start seeing things slowly return back to normal. And yeah, I mean, sort of full management, buyouts, 100% sale, 90%, just basically the way it was before this all happened.
Quite honestly, Roneil, I could talk to you all night. I mean, I've got thousands of questions, but we're at the end of our time, unfortunately. I know that was a very, very quick hour. I really want to thank you for joining us today.